Evening all, welcome back to the mammoth task that is extending this ship. My god, I'm already tired. Whew. Now begins the even more difficult bit. So we got our frame built. Look at that, that's our structure. It's bulging. Look at the bulgingness in the bottom there. I should call it the HMS Bulge. Oh god, this is slightly sending me mad, I think. But here we go. So we're going to start welding now. So look, there we go. One block done of probably about 300 or 400. Oh flipping heck, this is going to take some time. So again, I invite you to minimize perhaps the video. If you want to watch me weld stuff, then go for it, bro. If you don't, then I understand. Let's just minimize and let's continue. Perhaps our conversation on why certain games are so good yet seem to fail so abysmally. And I make myself popular with this because I'm going to cite a few other games here. Now, we've reviewed obviously Battlefield 4 and Titanfall. Really good games. Okay, lots of issues with Battlefield 4 it began with, but it's not bad now. But again, it just felt like there was something not quite right there. Moving forward on to things like Titanfall, we've obviously talked about. Great game, great IP, fantastic idea, but it felt too rigid. It was constrained. It didn't feel terribly enjoyable. It didn't feel free. And sometimes you just get a bit pissed off with the formulaic shooters. So for me, I hope Eve Legion, obviously when that comes out, is not going to be formulaic. It doesn't look like it is, because again, they have really maybe now understood that the idea is you want the sandbox of a game. So if we want to go and do dropship jumping from a great height and try and jump from one dropship to the other, we should be allowed to do that. There should be no restrictions on us doing that. We also need persistent districts as well, but that's jumping the gun. We'll come to that. We have a whole playlist starting up right now, which may even be out today or tomorrow, which is around Legion. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about it in this one. Space Engineers, however, I think has got it completely right with the fact that it is a completely open sandbox world where you can build whatever you want. So if I wanted to build a 100-foot phallic penis that just flies through space, you know, destroying rocks in a very kind of graphic and 18+ way, there's nothing stopping me doing that. And other than my moral indignation of maybe not doing that. I think that's actually the fun part of the game, is that actually is an option open to me. And I think certainly more games need to have that. They need to remove the playground, the fairground style of the game design. So that's where everything's facilitated. You arrive at the park, you then play on the rides, and the rides are all ushering you around, and then you go, and then you're done. And that's boring. That's how old games used to be. I would like to see more sandbox, sandpit style games where pretty much the tools are given to you, like Space Engineers. The tools are given to me, and it's up to me what I want to do with them, and I like that. And I think certainly Dust got that completely wrong. Dust was just trying to make a kind of, I don't know, a shooter that was really just a shooter, you know, incredibly round based, you know, and just maybe they did not understand that Eve players were actually from a sandbox game. It does feel that maybe when they did their review of Eve, somebody wasn't necessarily paying attention. Maybe it was a bit of hubris, maybe it was a bit of arrogance, but whatever it was, somebody was not necessarily getting the target market of Eve being sandbox, open world, you decide, you make your own story. So let's make a very facilitated shooter with, you know, very little MMO components, that the only option for you to do is to stay in a locked prison cell, aka your quarters, because lol, we don't want you to walk out the room, and then all of a sudden, and apparently you're fighting all through the universe. Bollocks. It was a terrible idea, terrible idea. And again, you know, people seem to think that I white knight for CCP now. No way. It was a terrible idea. I don't even know why I play it so much. I don't even know why I got so involved. I can answer that, so let me answer that. I mean, Dust is stroke still will be, and you know, so on, a good game. It is a very good game, incredibly good game, because I think basically it's the people you play it with, and it's also maybe then the feeling of the shooter is not bad at all. I honestly do believe that, having played many, you know, maybe now, or you know, a good 90% of all the shooters ever made. I think Dust got it right in a lot of areas, got it wrong in a lot of others, but it just felt pretty good, and I think the vehicle mechanics were good, etc. And I think, yeah, you know, when you compare it to kind of the plastic nature of a lot of PC shooters, you know, I think maybe that Legion will feel more substantial. I think that it's such a strange concept, but if you can make a game feel more substantial, as in more important, then I think people value it more. And I think that's important because a lot of the free-to-play shooters now, they're very, very casual throwaway kind of games. And I think PlanetSide 2 is a great example of this because it doesn't really matter how many times you'll die at all. It doesn't matter at all, in fact. You can just go and keep spamming suits and blah, blah, blah. And believe me, it gets boring after a while. I think there's so few games out there that just give you something different, and DayZ and all these have just given you that different thing. And I think Legion, if it's going to be a success, has to give you something different. It can't just be another, you know, sci-fi shooter which is very mediocre. It needs to be completely different. So the metagaming aspect needs to be very important. I think that's it's almost front and center in its importance, is the metagaming capability. So my ability to completely, you know, screw over you by, you know, using out of game stuff, that's what makes the stories. And it's stories that sell games. Eve, let's face it, Eve has only ever really been successful because so many people hear so many stories about it. And that's the beauty of it. That's why it becomes such a good game. And I think Legion has to go the same way. There has to be some form of mechanics that mean, you know, like Dust was boring. And I think the whole PC mechanic was designed to build a bit of drama and a bit of strife and struggle. Very little happened. I know a lot of people will shout Eon at me now and, oh, but what about this and what about that? No, the problem was it was too elitist. So, you know, yes, it was filled with drama and great stories, but for like a couple of hundred people maximum. That's it, a couple of hundred people maximum. And nobody gives a shit what a couple of hundred people think, because a couple of hundred people don't matter. What you need is the vast majority of a community in uproar about something to make the great stories. And that, unfortunately, with Dust never happened. It only really just happened with Eve, I think, lately as well, with the big battles happening and them making news, etc. But it's taken a long, long time for that to come through. So for me, I mean, this is why it's very disappointing, and the whole kind of CPM thing has been a little bit disappointing as well with Dust, because I think they listen to obviously such a small group of people. They don't really understand that Dust has a very big audience. It has a huge audience, and I think, you know, things like was it Kane Spiro completely kind of, you know, dominating PC and locking it out. That's kind of strange as well. So I kind of think that a lot of people have maybe, you know, not abused their positions, but they've not done their job in the spirit of the job. And I think that's kind of been an issue across the board as well. So, you know, all of these things have just made Dust to be such a forgettable game, because so few people really engaged in it, and at that level where the drama could be made. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if I explained that very well, but you know, in essence, the problem is that if a game's going to be big, it needs to make headlines. If it makes headlines through intrigue and guile and deceit, as Eve does, then, you know, there should have been a lot more of that in Dust. Not enough people got involved in PC because it was too limiting. Not enough people got involved with PC because the mechanics were fucking awful, that just meant nobody could even get into it. So CCP shot themselves in the foot entirely with that, because if you can't even get into PC to actually be a name and part of it, then why on earth do they think there's going to be any drama or intrigue in the game at all? And I'll tell you why, there isn't. And that's a shame. And I think, you know, the CPM have a little bit to respond here, because again, it does feel that they've been asleep at the wheel. But again, I'm just going over old footage now, because it's like, to be honest, they always have been, and they always will be. And I think, to be honest, they're not a power of this game at all, nor were they ever. They could have been, and they could have been something really quite good for the community, by the community. But in the end, I think their own personal agendas and egos have kind of just locked it all out. And I think that's why it's kind of a dead concept. And to be honest, it is dead. I know that obviously people still get quite het up about them, and they ask me my opinion all the time on them, and to be honest, I'm just like, well, to be honest, who cares? They're nobodies, you know what I mean? They had the opportunity to make this game good, and they failed. So, you know, let's move on to the next concept, which is going to be Legion. I hate to say that. I'm not having a go at the CPM. They did a great job for what they could and the powers they were given, but I think just again, it was just difficult sell. You know, selling a console game to console gamers, you know, with the intrigue of the PC MMO, difficult, very difficult stuff. Anyway, why the hell am I talking about Dust and Space Engineers? It's because of this. Look at this welding. My God, this is and this is double speed. You can imagine how long it took me to do it. Crikey. We're not going to cheat though. We're going to build this entire shell from the materials we've gathered, and we're going to build it properly. We have to, you know, we can't cheat. There's no fun in cheating. But we will do the internal bit possibly with creative mode, just because of the internal decks. So I don't really want to have to build them. But there we go. It's looking, it's coming on, and just constantly building such a huge structure. My God, it's a hangar. I'm building absolutely a hangar on my own. That's pretty funny. And I think this just is a testament to the game. We could have made this 10 times bigger. We could have made it, hugely more complex. But just it's such a good game. I love it so much. Hopefully you do too. Post in the comments. Tell me what you're building at the moment. Tell me what your latest revelations have been maybe about this game. Because for me, I think the whole kind of capability of the turrets and the environmental condition I love. I just love that so much. I'm really excited to see what more I can do with that. And I think the performance does need to be worked on a little bit. The performance is not great, but hopefully that's going to be an optimization that they'll do eventually. It suffers when you have too many people, too many things on screen. It's very difficult to play this game. But here we go. So we're going to start welding into, or rather cutting into. So look, we're taking a gyroscope out. That's not good, but we've got to. We're starting to build our ground floor for our base. This is looking good. And there we go. I think we'll probably cut there. And I think, to be honest, we're going to maybe do a little bit of work of this offline. So by the next time you see us, don't worry, I'm not going to cheat. But the next time you see us, you should then see a much more finished ship. It may even be being painted as we go. But, I don't really want to just keep showing me welding stuff now, because it's going to take me probably half a day of welding to get this done. But when you come back, hopefully it will be a bit more pretty. He says, look at that, look at how many plates I'm having to build. Oh my God, my whole stack of iron is just going to be dissipated with this whole thing. Anyway, there we go. Hope you enjoyed that. We'll see you next time.